This is a story that started 50 years ago, and it started when we went to Mexico, to Monterrey, Mexico, to an orphanage. And where we went was to this place here. So I don't know if it's actually the name is the same or if it's different. But what I do know, it took me, if I zoom out, let's zoom out so you see where we're at. So what I remember as a kid, I remember driving through Monterrey, Mexico, and I remember basically very limited signs or anything. So my dad drove, and we'll get to more of that. I think we crossed in Laredo, came down here on whatever this Route 85 was at the time. Got to Monterrey, and I remember this Mexican guy like standing on the corner, and I remember my dad like somehow asking for directions or something. And I remember the guy just getting into our car. He just kind of like opened the passenger side and jumped in and spoke very limited English. And at first he was going to drive the car, drive us out of Monterrey. But then I remember saying like, no, like, because there was a camper, or point of camper. It was a big station wagon. So this is 1973. I was 8 years old. But so anyhow, I remember going to an orphanage and driving through Monterey. So I was looking for orphanages, and the way I knew I could remember where this was at is that there was a church on top of this hill. And so by searching like a dozen orphanages, actually about the fourth or fifth one that popped up, I figured out where it was at. So if we go to Google Earth, if I zoom in, I remember this round church being on top of a hill or a small mountain. And if I go to Google Street View right here, if I go just a little bit this way, zoom in, there's the church. So I remember trying to climb that hill as a little kid. And the other thing I remember, this building here was there. It was like a little tiny general store. And I think these buildings were here too. This whole area here though was like a big gravel parking lot. So anyhow, let's get to more of this. So the reason we went was that my parents sent money to an orphanage to sponsor orphans, and that little girl there, her name was Anna. And after we got there, my parents discovered that she had two sisters. So their intention was to adopt her, but something happened that it didn't work out. I think because she had the sisters, and there was still family that was trying to get them back, so that didn't happen. So this was 1973. At the beginning of the video, I was showing this church on top of a hill. These videos are being shot from on top of that hill, shooting downward. I'm not exactly sure what we were filming. I think this was the back area of the orphanage, just some of the landscape. So these were some of the dorms, I believe, where the young people lived, and maybe the cafeteria area. I do remember that we did not drink the water, but we ate food there, which caused us to get very ill on our last day there. I believe that might have been the house where the people who ran the orphanage stayed in. And I think that building may have been like administration offices. The highway would be to the left. You can just barely see the top. Our station wagon, not the white, but the one that was just barely on top. Once again, I think these were additional dorms or the sleeping quarters of the orphans. I do remember that there was not glass in a lot of the windows. So out of those four, the two on the right are my two brothers. The ones that are waving the most are my brothers, or telling two of the kids that lived at the orphanage to wave at the camera. And that is my sister carrying the guitar, and then her friend is Jody, and my sister's name is Crystal. My sister had blonde hair, and there she is. That's me. She's helping me down the hill. And when we got there, I remember the people that lived there were staring at her, calling her Doris Day, because she would sing the song Que Sera Sera, and she had blonde hair. And I believe they probably had never seen a blonde-haired girl before in person. So the other thing we noticed, that they didn't have a lot of toys at football there. The American football is the football that we brought, and the kids had, I believe, had never seen anything like that before. Of course, they referred to a soccer ball as a football. I remember all the kids that lived there were super excited to have people visit. That little kid there was probably the only kid that spoke English. I can't remember his name. So the ball there they used to play soccer with, but it wasn't really a soccer ball. So that's the travel trailer that we pulled from Illinois to Monterrey, Mexico. Station wagon, 7 people in that station wagon. About anything that could go wrong on a vacation like that probably did. The worst, like I mentioned, was that we got very ill on the last day or two that we stayed there. I don't remember how many days we were actually there. I'm guessing maybe 3 or 4. So that's something that we brought with us for some reason, a bow and arrow. They didn't have any toys that I can remember. The little blonde-haired boy, he was actually the kid of the people that worked at the orphanage. I remember my parents didn't really care for him too much because he was constantly trying to get in every picture and every video that my parents were taking. Some of the scenery from around the orphanage across the highway, I believe that was the Sierra Madre Mountains. At least that's what I remember. I could be totally wrong. I was only 8 years old when we were there. And that kind of wraps it up. Our trip to Monterrey, Mexico.